first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Riff Worship. We are the Buh Boys. Dylan Adams, Austin Paulson, Justin Swindle. We are the hosts of this illustrious show. Hey, fellas, how are y'all doing?
Hey, fellas. The Buh Boys? Is this our boy band group name?
The Buh Boys?
The Buh Boys.
Right. That's the only noise we make.
Buh. Buh.
Ooh. Ooh.
Everyone buzz in a different way.
That's right. But we all buh together.
We all buh together.
We buh better together. How are you?
I'm fucking doing great. It's cold outside. It's supposed to be snowing.
God, keep it fucking there.
Damn. Yeah, it was it's been a treacherous week, and then to have the first snow of the year, just on my way to work outside, it's cold, I hate myself.
In the Badlands, oh man, they killed everything.
We're gonna get demonetized now because Dylan's like
I can't wait for the Riff Worship where we talk about fucking Bruce Springsteen.
It'll happen.
Ooh, Nebraska, baby.
It'll be that one.
Let's get sad.
You know what? I'd rather be sad than be at the DMV again.
I believe
I won't go into specifics. But I will say on that day recently, I had to get some dental work done. That was pretty extensive. I had an old silver filling that was like coming out. And they had to like swap it, with a better
knock it right out of you,
dude. The dentist is great, and he's like, Dylan,
hell of a right hook.
He's like, if you feel anything, just just let me know. He's like, all you're gonna feel is a little bit of maybe a little bit of pushing. And I go, okay. He had that drill in there, and where I guess that thing was still set, it sounded like they were just chopping granite apart in my fucking mouth. It was terrifying, but TV Land was on, and Laverne and Shirley was on, and all I could remember was that theme, so it's just stuck in my head.
Shamil, Shamazel, Incorporated.
We're gonna do it, and we'll take it, in every room we'll wake it. So I get to the DMV a couple hours later, and then it's just Primus in my head. It's like DMV the entire time.
So you got that silver fill-in taken out. What's going to protect you from werewolves?
So nothing. That's the thing. It's like I'm like
You're
Nixon in Futurama.
Fucking done for, man. The werewolves are going to get you.
Arr. But other than that, I'm doing pretty good. Ready for this mashuggah of a fucking holiday we've got coming up.
Oh God, yeah.
We're getting Chinese food.
Yeah.
Shit's going to be tight.
Speaking of holidays.
Speaking of werewolves.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about ISIS's Celestial. And before we get into the band or the album, we usually ask how everyone's heard of the album. So, I'll start with Austin. How did you hear about ISIS?
Well, my dog wrote it.
Yes, your dog ISIS.
It was not my dog. I guess our good friend John's dog, the former roommate. The worst joke that could ever happen.
Who made that joke?
Justin Swindle.
Me, baby.
Used to call my dog ISIS and try to train it to respond to ISIS.
In fact, I told every single person at a party over and over again that the dog's name was ISIS all night long.
He did.
I guess it kind of made... Okay, so the dog's name in the shelter was Icy. We then called her Roxy, but yeah, you can connect the dots. I'd never heard this record before. I know of this band. I know of some of the kind of offshoots of the bands that came after. I never really listened to this band, so I don't have much of a relationship with them. I am aware of their influence. I am aware of the players on the record and the things that they have done for underground music. But yeah, I can't say that I've like really have done much of a deep dive as we've kind of constructed here today. So Baldini.
So I became aware of the band through Decibel Magazine throughout the years. Actually, let me correct that. Revolver Magazine in 2004 put out an issue that had the top 100 heaviest bands. And 14 years old, picked it up, was like, there's obviously some great fucking bands in here. Neurosis was on there, Strapping Young Lad, stuff like that. But ISIS was a little bit further down the list. And so the name stuck with me. And I went, all right, this is probably a band I'm going to check out. I really didn't get into the band until much later when Wavering Radiant came out. I bought it on release day. And that's kind of the starting point with this band. I was really big Neurosis fan. To this day, I still am. Got into that band really early. And I just dove in and went, all right, I need to know where all this post-metal comes from, right? I need to know where the bands that sound like the kind of ISIS, or it was always referred to as Neurosis clones. Like, I need to hear that. And Wavering Radiant's a great record. I really enjoy that one a lot.
Aaron would disagree.
Yeah, I read that interview. And I really enjoy that record a lot. It's a little bit more melodic, definitely more so than this record for sure. And I went back. Like, I would go and buy, if I went to like a CD warehouse or something, I would buy an old ISIS CD if they had it. In the Absence of Truth is really good. I know there's some kind of, the band has differing opinions on some of their output as well. I think the production's a little weird on that one to them. Oceanic is really good. Panopticon's really good. Those are all great records. This band's never really put anything out bad. However, I was not very familiar with this record. In the last, I guess, 3 to 4 years, Swindle has talked a lot about this record to me. And I've given it more listens in the last couple years based off of him talking about it than I ever did. So a little familiar with this record, maybe not as much as I should be, but it's a really good record. It's really fun.
I think this was the record that I chose for ISIS. I like maybe in a less legal way came about all of their albums around the same time, probably around when Wavering Radiant came out, but it like didn't have anything to do with the album coming out. Like, I didn't see like any hype for the album and was like, oh, well, I'm gonna check this band out now. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe I like saw people when I was like lurking fucking lamb goat threads or whatever, saw people being like, how about ISIS, huh? And I was like, how about ISIS? How about this? So I probably got all of their shit like at the same time. And I think this was the one that I just stuck with. It's like heavier. I think as time went on, they like got a little less heavy, a little less aggressive. And I think maybe this one stuck out because of that to me.
I can concur to that. There definitely seems like the band got more into their melodic kind of aspects later on. A little bit more psychedelic, maybe?
Sure. And that's like certainly on here a lot too. So, I mean, you know, you kind of have like,
yes,
the pieces of the, you know, like maybe the 1 foot in the early influences, 1 foot in the future, where it's certainly more spacious. And, you know, every song on here kind of has like those kind of psychedelic breaks, very, very Floyd kind of esque, but fun listen for sure. Definitely, like, you can kind of zone out and really get lost in it. And,
yes. Oh, 100%.
And that is, you know, Swindle, I think, mentioned is like, oh, you could hear a riff and, you know, take a back seat and kind of just ride with it for a while. And then like, there's the next one. Here's like a variation of that one. And then take a back seat for a while again. Right.
It's, you know, each track, I don't even, you know, in scope of what's a riff kind of thing, you could really look at it and go, there's maybe 2 riffs per song. It's just how the riffs kind of progress and a note gets added here, pulled out there. It's very post-rock, very jammy, very Like it does feel like, I've said this a lot. It's a Torch quote from their vocalist. It's authority through repetition kind of thing.
In some interview I read, they talked about, well, in a bunch of interviews, Aaron was like, yeah, the early days of us as a band, we kind of like wore our influences on our sleeve a lot. And they like named bands that you would expect, like fucking Neurosis and the Melvins and da-da-da. But they also like named Slint as one of their influences. And I was like, that makes sense because like that Slint record, they just would play a riff into fucking submission and then move on to the next riff and play it into submission. And that definitely happens a lot on this fucking record.
There's definitely those aspects of, I guess you could classify Slint as post-hardcore to an extent, right? Like it's, hardcore adjacent in that sense. I mean, there's sounds on here that definitely, once you said that, I went, yeah, absolutely. The Melvins, to maybe a smaller extent, Neurosis is like, it's there. Like, you're not going to miss that at all. Like, it's all over this record. There's some Godflesh on here for sure. Maybe in more the industrial sounds, everything like that. Justin Broderick's post Godflesh project, Jesu, as well. A lot of that. Explosions in the Sky, Godspeed You Black Emperor. Like, it's all kind of, I mean, you could go down that rabbit hole of all that really expansive, heavy stuff like that and get a lot of it out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, and I'm sure we'll get into it too. I mean, there's connections with Justin Broderick and all those, like Jesu, like Hydra Head, all that stuff. So there's all that there. I mean, definitely in influence and like collaborating together.
There's also, I think, a lot more Boston metalcore influence on this record than you see at first listen, than you hear at first listen. Some of the riffs are a little bit more dissonant. Some of the riffs are a little kind of atonal. And when I mean Boston metalcore, I mean like that very late 90s, early 2000s, your Coalesce, your, I know they're not from that area, but they're kind of lumped into that same grouping. Early Converge, Botch, all of those bands along that styling. It's there. I mean, there's a riff in a track on here that I heard and I went, oh yeah, that's like very Botch, Every Time I Die kind of riff. That sounds like that. And that influence is definitely there because of where the band kind of originated from.
So ISIS, as a band, started in Boston. Before that, Aaron Turner had lived in Arizona,
New
right?
Mexico.
Aaron Turner lived
same
in
state.
New Mexico. And I think he may have had like one or two kind of very short-lived bands that only had like one or two shows. There's one, I don't even know if it's like one that is named, but I sent you all a message yesterday that he had a funny quote about. He noted in an interview that he was in a band that played one show and they had like, they played concrete and like drills and guitars. And they just had weird fucking wacky noise mic'd up, and they played one show ever and they opened for Coalesce and Bloodlet.
Wow.
Dude,
that's crazy.
Aaron Turner wrote the theme to Home Improvement and you fucking know he did.
He said that he didn't even remember if that band had a name. So so that's fun.
The thing like that, reading up on him and seeing some of the notes that we've kind of compiled together here is like, I commend Aaron for being active in this like form of music from like a super young age. But I'm like, what would have been, I'm sure it's out there. Maybe we just missed it. Or maybe you guys know, like getting in, what's like your entry point at that point? I mean, he started Hydra Head as kind of like a distro and a mail order thing at like fucking 16 and 17.
Right.
So you're like, you can barely drive and you're already like working with bands like, feasibly all over the country, maybe overseas. You're working with like label execs and stuff like that. It's like pretty fucking wild. So where does that begin? Like, I wonder, like, where do you start that?
I don't know that it was like the size of the labels he was working with would have had label executives.
Well, sure,
I know that in
Contacts.
an interview he said one of the labels that he looked at, one of the labels he looked at when he went to start Hydra Head as like a distro was Ebullition, which is like the label that Orchid and like Ampere and like a million hardcore releases, which obviously they're from like a very different area of the country, but I think it was like way smaller, like probably shit you see in magazines or whatever, right?
You know, being in New Mexico and moving to the Boston area and probably seeing a lot of bands in the Boston area and seeing how they were operating, but also growing up kind of like a punk rock kid, you know, getting things via tape trading or through zines or mail-in or orders or anything, and probably being burnt a few times on those and going, you know, I really want this music. I really want to, you know, listen to bands that sound like these bands I like. I'm sure there was a thought of, I can do this better, or I can do something like this. You know, you take a look at like, you know, Fat Wreck or something like that, where it originally started as very much just like a ma and pa situation, or, you know, SST or Discord or any of those labels like that. And I'm sure it was like, okay, because wasn't it in our Coalesce episode where we talked about how they booked a tour and it was just like, all right, let's just call everybody or anything like that. I'm sure there was a little bit of that, but I'm sure he grew up a punk rock kid.
There was, sorry, I know there was that one story. I can't remember which member of ISIS said it, where, you know, it is a lot of figuring it out, where I think they mentioned something about driving all over Massachusetts looking for the venue they booked, and they they couldn't find it. They never found it.
Fuck.
They were like there. They were just going to fucking phone booths and picking out the phone book to like look for the address of the place. Yeah. Aaron did say that like his dad was into like jazz and tried really hard to get him into jazz, which like doesn't really translate into how you get into DIY hardcore in the 90s, but I guess it does like lay a foundation for like just fucking niche weirdo music, because jazz is like
freedom of expression kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, jazz is like, I mean, you could listen to like Kinda Blue, but then you got Bitches Brew. That's like, two completely different sounding things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've got like Sumac, which had different kind of facets of how they sound. And even ISIS, different facets. It's like, okay, there are no rules kind of thing. So I could definitely see that kind of evening its way into his brain a little bit.
After starting a couple bands in New Mexico, in 1995, he moved to Boston to go to the School of the Museum of Fine Arts for design or like some art. And his roommates there, he started, I think, one band there that released was maybe the first unofficial release of Hydra Head, or maybe the first two unofficial releases of Hydra Head. But then he started ISIS with his roommate, Jeff Koshid.
Yeah.
Which is, I definitely knew that person's name, for sure.
Yeah, I guess, like, just kind of reading up on it, and, you know, to kind of piggyback off of what Dylan said about, like, some of the hardcore that was coming out of the area. I mean, Aaron was in, like, two bands, like the Hollow Men and Union Suit. You know, Jeff was in a band called Cable. You know, some of the other members would be in bands like Loga and Age of Reason, but there was the one quote I saw where it was basically like the guys who maybe are maybe the heads, or like maybe the most, they're putting forth the most input. It wasn't sounding exactly like they wanted to sound, or maybe they were just getting tired of their old project. So, you know, here you are roommates with a guy, you have a lot of things in common. I think they said a lot of their record collections were pretty much the same. So then you kind of start spitballing ideas of maybe what it's kind of up here the whole time, and you're trying to find a an outlet for that.
They would go on to record essentially what they would call the demo of their first demo. Then they would record what they call their first demo and in 1998. And then they would record the Mosquito Control EP. That would also come out in 1998 on Escape Artist Records, which is a now defunct label from Philly.
This was fucking cool to find this out.
Yeah.
About this record label.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gordon Conrad. I was trying to look up forever, like, where the fuck, what is this label? I don't know anything about it, but I guess Gordon was like he worked for Relapse Records, which I guess was the initial label that ISIS was like trying. They sent it to Relapse or through Gordon to like, hey, maybe this would be something that Relapse would be interested in kind of picking up or signing. They weren't interested, but Gordon was beginning his own label in Escape Artist Records. And so that's through them kind of already having a relationship together. That was just kind of like, oh yeah, we'll just do it. That's cool.
I don't know how, at this point of time, I don't know how serious Hydra Head is as a record label, but I know from an interview that Aaron was kind of interested in getting ISIS. He was kind of weary of releasing ISIS releases on his record label because he was always afraid that like other bands were going to think that he thought ISIS was more important than their band. So I think, although like Celestial is co-released by Hydra Head, I think he just was never like super interested in putting out their records for that reason, separating themselves kind of.
I think that's very reminiscent of when the Neurosis collective kind of formed Neurot Recordings, which tie in with this band as well. Neurosis was on Relapse alst while Neurot was forming and had been formed for quite some time. And then I think once the Relapse record contract ended, they just kind of picked that up. I think there was that focus as well. That way you could definitely show the bands that you're signing, hey, you're a priority. Our project's handled this way, right? Our project is handled in a different way. But it also shows too, maybe I understand feeling that way. I'm not going to claim to know what these guys were thinking of that, but it's hard to see that. But it also, you can view it in a way of if the band has, say the band released 2 records and the records had done well by our standards, and then it starts to be released specifically through Hydra Head. It's like, okay, it shows that there's credibility for the label as well, kind of thing.
I do want to mention too, with these like first initial releases, that there's quite a few member like shifting around here through the first like few early years. Like the demo was recorded as like a 5-piece. We had Aaron Turner and Jeff, as we mentioned. You also have Chris Merchuk on vocals and electronics, Aaron Harris on drums, and Randy Larson on guitar. Randy, I believe, was also in Cable. He's also a future member or an ex-member of Come to Grief, which I thought was interesting with that Boston connection there.
I loved in the doc you said future ex-member of Come to Grief.
And then even I couldn't tell if it was after Mosquito Control or if it was in between the demo and that first EP where Aaron had mentioned that they literally like almost broke up while like playing shows, because they played some shows here and there. Like they played some music festivals. They were playing with like Converge, Soylent Green, I Hate God, Dillinger Escape Plan. But there was a quote that said, ISIS breaks up for the first time. 1998, ISIS does a summer tour with Cable. Our first tour out of the Northeast, shows canceled, band members fighting, horrible pizza at an Italian/Chinese restaurant in North Carolina, broken disco
God. Oh, God.
Broken disco balls and bloody knuckles, threats to take a bus home, band breaks up, and then gets back together at the end of the tour, almost the end of ISIS. So it's like, you've barely done anything, and you're just already like almost like...
I want to know. I want to know what was on that pizza.
Oh, God.
I want to fucking know. That trumps like a friend of ours ordering a hamburger at an Italian restaurant.
Oh yeah, he still does it. He still fucking does that shit.
He's gonna hear this.
I hope so.
Maybe not.
He knows we love him.
But Randy left before Mosquito Control, I believe. So that EP was recorded as a 4-piece. And the other thing too that I think it is important to note is that for the next couple releases, we also have some other Massachusetts royalty kind of working side by side with the band Kurt Ballou. So a lot of this material recorded at God City. So there you go.
We've already, from the Converge side, we've already kind of established the relationship of ISIS and Converge because Aaron Turner did artwork for Petitioning the Empty Sky.
Correct.
And
Right.
possibly When Forever Comes Crashing. Other other punk rock famous members of ISIS, Jay Randall joins the band at some point, right?
Yeah, they get
to make a noisemaker.
Yeah, so basically at the end of Mosquito Control, they get like 2 new members. They get Mike Gallagher, who was a member of a band called Cast Iron, I believe. Cast Iron Hike, I think is maybe what and then Jay Randall, who was in Agoraphobic Nosebleed, of course, Japanese Comedy Torture Hour. He did like vocals and electronics. But Jay replaced Chris. I think Agoraphobic had already done their debut Honky Reduction in '98 for Relapse. So again, just kind of being in that area, and I'm sure they're friends. But yeah, the lineup I found, after they got their members, I think they went on a Northeast tour with Converge and Cavity, and then they toured Quebec with Ire and Anodyne. I think I hope
that's the word.
Correct. But yeah, cool stuff. Go ahead.
Oh,
Aside from Jay Randall being in the band, kind of the next thing they release is the Saw EP.
I love this.
Like
which is kind of only notable because the format of the
it's like the dumb. It's probably maybe the dumbest. Like, yeah, let's just slam them
put
together.
it on a fucking saw.
So
we have a CDR. What can we do to market this? And someone was just in a shed hanging out, and they're like, "All right,
so
fucking bet."
A Hydra Head release. It's like 2. So you essentially have 2 cover songs. Street Cleaner by Godflesh, which I believe is from the Godflesh debut. You also have Hand of Doom by Black Sabbath. So it's 200 CDs were released attached to a full-size metallic Sawblade. Only sold during their 1999 tour with Neurosis and Candiria. So the ISIS logo was painted onto the face of the Sawblade. The CDR was contained within folded paper liner notes and bolted onto the back of the blade. So there's a quote from Aaron.
Bolted.
There's a quote from Aaron that says, the CD version was a literal saw blade with the CD screwed onto it, which we were prohibited from selling at more than a couple shows. Fortunately, no one was ever injured by one of these as far as I know.
Listen, I am not a fan of government surveillance, but I just want to say, if someone goes out and purchases 200 saw blades, they ought to be put on a list. Put them on a fucking list.
So like you walk in, there's the tour setup, right? Merch tables, whatnot. Neurosis has their merch set up. Candiria's got their merch set up. And then you walk over and it's like, did somebody leave this here? Did this get dropped off by mistake? Oh no, that's our new like covers EP. All right. How much is it? $10. Okay. All right. I'll buy 2.
Trying to
sucker for a gimmick.
Trying to give Jackal a run for their money.
God, that'll be the only reference to that band we ever fucking make, and Justin Swindle just made it.
So at least one of those covers got repurposed for a Pig Destroyer split, right?
Yeah, it came out in 2000, July 4th, 2000 on Relapse. So yeah, ISIS did the Street Cleaner cover on this, and then Pig Destroyer put forth a couple Carcass covers. Genital Grinder, Regurgitation of Giblets, sorry.
There you go.
Exhumed to Consume. And so that's pretty rad.
I want to make note too, before we move on. ISIS basically got a Neurosis tour off of EPs and demos. And this is like when Neurosis was probably at their biggest. This would have been during the Times of Grace era, so 99. Yeah, that's big deal shit. They did a tour with Converge early on based off of like EPs. I know this is pre-Jane Doe, but still Converge was one of the bigger things in hardcore.
At this time, Converge only had EPs out.
That's right. That's right. So like this is pretty fucking wild too.
Speaking of EPs, the last one that kind of comes out before the full length, the Red Sea EP 99. This was on Second Nature Recordings, who we have previously mentioned in the Coalesce episode. Dan Askew, which friends with Sean. I think they put out the Functioning on Impatience record in 98. Maybe some other things as well, but that label also released a 7-inch from Aaron Turner's band Union Suit as well, what I found. So there's some connections there as well. One thing that I did find interesting when I was there's like an article that they kind of like briefly go through each release, or at least like the pretty important ones. And Aaron kind of mentions that like, or at least you guys had mentioned before, they're wearing their influences on their sleeves, but they kind of are like finding their voice a little bit here. Like there's a song that Aaron mentioned specifically on Mosquito Control, Life Under the Swatter, which was kind of like the beginning he kind of cites as like, all right, maybe we're kind of figuring out what we're doing. The Red Sea, even for instance, was like, he said, for whatever shortcomings this record has, it's one of the darkest things we ever recorded in terms of atmosphere, production, and composition. So while it's maybe not exactly what you would hear on some later records, I think they're kind of finding it. They're like wafting through their influences a little bit.
That's one thing I want to say about this band too is I didn't spend a lot of time with the earlier EPs, and that is a slight for me, but the band sounds like the band even from the first record. Yeah. They spent time honing their sound. Like you put it on, it sounds like ISIS. It doesn't sound, you can hear the influences to it, but it doesn't sound like, oh, this is a Neurosis ripoff. This is a Godflesh ripoff. This is a Melvins ripoff. It sounds like them. They already have their sound pretty well set up. And I understand that Aaron says this is the darkest thing they've done, but all their music's pretty dark. Like it's like in scope, like truthfully, it's dark sounding. I also have an inside joke that only Swindle's going to get. Did they part the Red Sea?
I wouldn't get that.
No.
Oh,
this is before your time.
I mean, it is a like third-hand reference to that thing in the Bible, but I made a joke about some Christian band.
Oh, okay.
Some Christian band. But coming off that the Red Sea EP, they had a tour with Cave-In where a funny incident happened, right, Austin?
Yeah. So
God damn.
Again, some member changes here really quick. Jay Randall, they said mysteriously leaves the band. I think he just wanted to focus on other stuff. So
it's the Spinal Tap drummer blowing up thing.
They get Cliff Meyer, who is in another band called the Gersh. I think that's how you pronounce it. But this was a band.
The Gooch.
The Gersh.
Yes.
It's like
The Girth.
The Girth. The Gersch. I don't know much about this band. You can find I think their whole discography on their Bandcamp page, but they were essentially on the Hydra Head's sister label Tortuga Records. And he joined the writing process while they were writing Celestial, which we'll get into. But that marks they finally have their solidified lineup that would persist through the remainder of the band. But they embarked with this lineup on a 1999 summer tour of the U.S. And this also might be the dates were kind of fuzzy because Aaron also mentioned a summer 2000 tour. I don't know which. Could be 99, could be 2000. Either
they
way,
probably toured with Cave-In 10 million times.
Right. So this might be a 2000 tour. But they were driving down the highway in Pennsylvania. They see smoke out of the window a few miles off. They come up on the highway rest stop and see Cave-In, their van basically completely immersed in flames. He says his heart drops to the pit of his stomach. They pull over and run towards the fire, find all the members of Cave-In in the crowd watching the van burning. Some guy in the crowd makes a sarcastic remark about the fire, and Caleb, the bassist of Cave-In, basically says, "That's my van on fire." The guy stops talking. Caleb's unhappy. Next few shows, we sell half-melted Cave-In CDs and smoke-roasted T-shirts to try to help them recover a bit of their losses. They would also tour with Neurosis in 1999 that winter as well. But God, can you imagine just something here's like a melted CD or like those like bonfire smelling fucking t-shirts?
Oh, damn. I can't.
God damn,
like,
what smells like wire burning?
yeah, it smells like fire and gasoline. You probably ain't getting that gasoline smell out of those fucking shirts.
Oh, no.
Somebody still has a cave-in shirt that smells like that to this day.
Probably so.
Right. So that brings us up to their first full-length release, Celestial. Like Austin said, at this point they kind of solidify their lineup. Aaron mentioned that Cliff joined in the album's process, so I'm not really sure like at what point, if it's in the writing, like they're already in the middle of writing it, or if they're like about to start recording or demoing or whatever. So in some interviews, Aaron kind of felt like they wouldn't reach their full stride as a band until like the writing of Oceanic, because that was the first full album that everyone in the band wrote, the whole album. But they're still making strides to get to that point at this point. One thing he said was, while our influences are still overtly obvious in parts, I would say that this album definitely displayed a more fully realized version of what we eventually became. And he also said that this was probably the first time that he'd ever recorded anything that he could listen to and not wince at. This was the first album
That's funny.
that he could listen to it and not just like shudder from the things that have been recorded.
Do you guys have you ever achieved that? I know you've recorded. I have not recorded anything ever in my life, but I'd imagine no, he's still
no.
Oh yeah, I mean it's. Yeah, I argue to say that the Street Debt recording has never really made me wince.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I could listen. I could listen to that and go like, "Hey, I'm proud of this."
Yo, yeah, that's a great.
Like, absolutely.
Yeah, still got it. Still got all your shit. Just
no shirt though.
Biting it now. Wonder where that went.
So there's not. Just in general, there isn't a ton of information about ISIS on the internet, and that is by their own design. They really appreciated being mysterious people in
Anonymous.
the metal scene, and I think people like Paul from Chain probably appreciate that a lot about ISIS. But also, what little information there is about Oceanic. So
yeah, I wonder.
We're kind of grasping at the smallest straws to get any little information we could.
I was trying to. I guess I didn't have the Hall of Fame for Oceanic. It has fucking Chuck Billy on the front. It's like from 2012. And I was like, I had a bunch from that era, so maybe there's a tidbit. I'm probably not a lot. They probably like gloss over Celestial a little bit in that. Right. I didn't read it, but we do have like some production information, so that's cool. We've talked about this. We've talked about this name a few times on this show already. Matt Bayless, producer, recording, mixing. This album was recorded and mixed at the Outpost in Stoughton, Massachusetts, in January through February of 2000. Of course, Matt is an ex-member of Minus the Bear, synth and keyboardist. At this point, I kind of looked up just some of his credits. He was like an assistant engineer on the self-titled Alice in Chains record, assistant engineer on Down on the Upside, Soundgarden 96, assistant engineer Pearl Jam, Yield 98. He recorded and mixed the Queensryche album, which Matt Graham will be very stoked to hear about. And here in the Now Frontier from 97. But probably his more notable records would be like working with Botch, the Deftones, Blood Brothers. Of course, we've talked about him working at Mastodon. He's worked with Russian Circles as well as Old Man Gloom. But he also worked like pretty much extensively through the, ISIS full length, output.
The only one he didn't do was Wavering Radiant, and that was handled by Evil Joe Baresi, I think. Actually, I'm pretty confident in that. Who has done has done a few of the Tool albums, worked with Queens of the Stone Age, different things like that. Very organic, kind of rich sounding stuff. I just want to mention this about Matt. I love his production. I listened to both versions of this record, by the way. I listened to the original release and the remaster. And the remaster does sound a little bit different. I feel like there's more bass actually on the original mix of it. Like it stands out a lot more. But just to see Matt's credentials of seeing an assistant engineer, that probably means he was still kind of learning the ropes. But when you're the assistant engineer on 3 of the biggest bands that formed post like 1990 or like after 1990, that's fucking nuts. Just in like, for 3 years or over a 3-year period, I did Alice in Chains last record with Lane Staley. I did Soundgarden's pre-breakup album. And then I worked with Pearl Jam on Yield, one of their bigger records. But I'm really digging all these like post extreme,
right?
Like thrash influenced bands. It's like, all right, this dude's got good taste.
I also want to mention too,
except for that Queensryche record.
Sorry, Matt.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry, bud.
Aaron and Jeff are also credited with recording some music on this. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe like some of the layering. Who knows exactly what they recorded for the record. Dave Marullo mastered the record at M-Works in Cambridge, Massachusetts in February of 2000.
I was just going to say, the notes say that the people in the band's recording are like tracks 1, 5, 7, and 11, and those are all the Signal tracks.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. So
they're just the ones sitting behind the old computer.
They're in the submarine.
Doing the clicking and the clacking.
Bleep.
Okay, that makes sense.
Bleep.
Yeah, making some nice ambient tracks. So all right. So all the transitional pieces were done by them. Okay, that makes sense. And of course, one more thing, Aaron Turner, of course, credited with the artwork. He's done the artwork for all the band shit up to this point. I'm sure after as well. So
he went to school for it. Why not?
Yeah, no kidding. Who'd have thought? So yeah, we got kind of the background. We got into the band's history. Shall we get into the meat and potatoes?
I do want to say, note that we did take is, although Oceanic is now widely regarded as the band's best album, there are songs from this album that they played until they broke up live, like almost every show, which they were even surprised to think about, given how they feel about their own music throughout time.
There's that great kind of quote about how fickle they are with the songs that they choose, and I thought that was great. It's like, I really like this song. I fucking hate it. Get it out of here. I can just see them all sitting in a room together, just going like, that's
Robble.
fuck.
I'm robbling.
Yeah. God, do we got to play Glisten again? Like, God damn it. We toured that fucking record 10 years ago.
Also, before we get into the business with this album, I brought it up in our group chat, but there is a word that ISIS makes me think of, that Dylan and I have used separately that have meant very different things. And that's linear. Anytime Dylan talks about linear songwriting and I talk about linear songwriting, I feel like they've meant two completely different things.
Okay.
Still speak.
Can you tell me what you mean when you say linear songwriting?
Linear songwriting from point A to point B. There's not a lot of traffic in between, meaning there's not a lot of differing variations. Like the songs are very verse, chorus, verse, bridge, structure, just straightforward.
See, my linear songwriting, what I think of when I say linear songwriting is not verse, chorus, verse. It is like a line, a straight line, like ISIS. They don't have verses and choruses. It's the songs are a straight line. It's like part A, B, C, D, E, F.
Interesting.
Okay.
I mean, it's forward moving.
Yeah.
I'll give it that. The whole thing is like it should be meant as like, or it should be enjoyed. It is meant to be enjoyed as like one piece. I don't think you.
Right.
Oh yeah. Agreed.
So
that's funny because when we were having that conversation, I immediately was like, oh, it's going to be the word dense, because I will refer to things as dense in a positive way of like, this is such a dense production. There's all these layers. And sometimes the word dense gets used in a negative way of like, fuck, that's dense. Like, man,
we are dense.
Right. And like, I've heard Swindle use that and we use it in two different ways. I was like, oh yeah, it's got to be dense. And like,
no,
linear makes sense. Dill speak.
Yeah. All right, so now we can get into the business of the album. We open the album with one of, I think, four.
On this we have 4.
Right.
There's a 5th on a different thing we'll talk about later, but
4 kind of noise tracks. I guess we didn't mention really like allegedly the theme of the album. I mean, it's called Celestial. I would assume that there has some like space connotations to that, but personally I don't pick up on space, and allegedly like a lot of the meaning of this album is about like the government watching over people, and how as technology like leaps forward, we will be surveilled more, which I mean is true, but I don't know any of the lyrics. Also, I don't know about this album specifically, but in a lot of interviews, Aaron, like people would ask Aaron about the packaging in the albums, and they would say like the albums don't even have the lyrics fully in them. Like some of the lyrics would be in the liner notes, but he would also like have like quotes from books or something that he just like thinks fits in with a song, or like fits in with the
where have we seen that before?
Album.
Isn't that isn't there a fella named Brian that's prone to do that?
Right. So I'm not exactly sure like what the album's about thematically. I'm bringing that all up to say every time I hear this, I think of submarines because of the bloop boop.
Yeah.
Signal One, my battleship.
We're talking about Signal One, the first of 4 instrumental tracks. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it's like I imagined a big glowing green
sonar
radar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Boop, boop.
My notes just say keyboard ticks.
Yes.
Right.
Lots of keyboard clacking, and it's an ASMR record. Actually, this is what this is.
I'm
halfway.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some interesting panning going on with some of this shit too. Just really having some fun experimenting. Of course, this really, I think, serves, as with most of these like intros, these ambient intros, they serve as like kind of a way to bring us into the first track, and it just fucking kicks right into it. Honestly, like there's so many moments where a song will kind of fade out, and then you're just back into the shit. Like it just, yeah. So Signal One almost immediately kicks right into Celestial, the Tower, the title track.
And that riff is hard riff, and they repeat it a lot, and it's kind of just one note.
Yes. Repetition.
It's just kind of a triplet feel kind of riff.
Right.
It goes on for the whole song.
Yeah. It sounds like Neurosis.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Even that, I forget the track, but it's got that like it's got that layered like screech kind of thing.
Yep.
Not to the intensity of that Neurosis track that I can't remember the name of, but it's there. It's like kind of like it's like a, I don't know how to explain
there
it.
And it's this band always, especially on this record, sounds equal parts drone as it does like doom on it as well. I mean, it's just really locked in. I really like the kind of, as it builds intensity, there's those kind of guitar scrapes that they're doing as well, where they're kind of muting all the strings, just like
it's like that shuffle kind of
yeah.
They do that a lot. There's a lot of like that off kiltered thing where you could maybe anticipate where like a dumber person like me is like thinking like the riff is going to be played like this, but then they kind of switch it up on you, like just rhythmically. It's like very like off kiltered type of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
It's only something that could be written with people in a room.
Yeah.
Like you have to go, okay, we've played this for 3 minutes. I'm going to add this based off of feel, right? There's this great part that's going to lock in with the snare hits or anything. It takes a few minutes before the vocals kick in, for sure. And it's not even kind of his typical kind of growl he's got. I would say this is more of a yell kind of in comparison. I kind of put it in my notes as like a caveman kind of yell. And it's, he's Aaron's known for this big growl, especially in the ISIS catalog, this big kind of like roar that he's got. It's got a lot of power behind it. And you do get those kind of later in the track as well. The drums are really locked in on this, on the whole album, but this track in particular, really, really locked in.
Bless the drummer, honestly, for being able to just count. Because I would not. I would be like, so wait, are we like, is this the 19th time through this riff? Or like, is it like, there's no fucking way I could do that.
And what's cool about the drums is like when I heard this record, when I started listening to this record in preparation for today, I listened to it and I went like, this is right in Swindle's kind of wheelhouse. Like with the way the drums are placed and how they play and what they're doing. I go, this is right. Like it's not just a pure metronome the entire time. There's ebbs and flows with it, how he locks in. I go like, oh yeah, this is Swindle. Like 100%. Like this is that style of drumming that I like. And it's like, okay, this is great. Because there's a couple tracks on the record that we'll get to where he does do these very interesting things, but it's still like in the same kind of rhythmic placing. It's like, oh shit, the snare's like off and these different areas. But yeah, again, bless Aaron's heart. Because there's two Aarons in the band.
Yeah.
I got to make sure to remind myself that when I say Aaron.
Yeah. Aaron Harris, like I feel like I feel like I was hearing like, moments or little spurts of like Dale Crover, especially with the way that snare snapped and just
thank you for saying that. Dale Crover is one of my favorite drummers because he's got a snap to his playing that is hard to hear from other bands. Like it's hard to describe, but he's very on top of the beat and there's a snap to it. And Aaron definitely has that on this record for sure. And in his playing, you mentioned Neurosis, like there's that kind of post-rock style chorus of sorts. That's not really a chorus. Those big washy chords that they're kind of prone to use on this album. That is very Neurosis feeling, very later era Neurosis as well. There's the great kind of build up section in the song that it's very psychedelic.
Half
kind of builds. Yeah, it's the back half of the song.
Right.
I mean, this is a 9-minute plus track, right? It's the longest track on the record. Open your record up with the longest track, right?
The thing I thought was interesting about that kind of quiet part at the end of the song is that when it opens up, like the bass is the lead instrument of the quiet part, and it's like it's
saturated and delay.
At first, it's probably only one guitar doing the chords, and just the bass is like playing a little lead lick, and then the second guitar comes in and like starts playing a separate lead lick,
right?
And the bass is still playing lead.
So it's that interplay, like. It starts out with the bass, then the right guitar is this very clean kind of, it's not strummed, but just like kind of staccato kind of guitar chords being played. And then the left-hand side guitar is distorted and it's a little lower in the mix. And they're playing completely separate things, but the bass, as you said, is definitely tying it all together because the notes will blend together at certain points. It sounds like the left guitar too has the volume rolled off slightly. Rather than using like a pedal or something, it's just like, I'm just going to dial the volume down a little bit, give it a little less saturation than kick into it. Because when it kicks in, volume up, boom, like it's all right there. Because this song has that great use of the really low tuning this band is in, at about 2.5, 245 in, where it goes to kind of like the big go.
Oh yeah. That like
tuning.
Just hitting the open E probably or whatever, like it just boof. Like
well, this band's they've been prone, and I don't know if this track's in that tuning. Primarily, they play in drop B, like that's kind of
I just meant
standard tuning
hit the low string.
Yeah, but and I say that because they also have experimented with these like baritone tunings from time to time. Like Aaron has went on to tune his lowest string down to like an F sharp. That's what that sounds like. It's so low that it's just like, it just feels like a wash. And it's like the bomb note kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it works really well. And it adds such a dynamic hit to it. That's just really fucking cool. For a longer track, it's very engaging. You get caught up in it. You kind of go down this path with it. it's definitely a record you can listen to and relax to in some strange way. Like it's an aggressive record, don't get me wrong. Like, but I think people with our heads and our brains are going to go, yeah, I can relax to this. But it's very much this is just a cool opening track to this. The last minute of the track is very post-rock to me, like very, not even post-hardcore, just post-rock kind of thing.
With that, I mean, you get this kind of laid back jam at the end. And then again, you're lulled into that false sense of security that we've mentioned and loved so much on the show. But, Glisten, you're kind of right back into the fucking heavy, man. I mean, the guitars on this record are just so fucking massive. And, to kind of go off of what Dylan said of that, like that low tuning, they're almost like, and not in a bad way. They're like flubby. Like the way it sounds is like, it's got like this flubby sound to it. And
that's a Melvins thing.
The just so fuzzed out and just so big. This song opens up with these like really huge sustaining chords, but then kind of switches tempos like on a dime to like that. It's like a slow pummel to almost like a headbanging chug kind of riff.
Yep. The fill change.
Those chords are fucking dissonant.
Yes.
They sound nasty.
That's where my ears started to go, that's Converge, that's Botch, that's later era Neurosis, that's all of that coming out with those huge tritone dissonant chords.
This was the first song that I noted, like what you were saying about the last song, where they'll obviously, like we said, they'll play the same part like a million times, but they'll like add a triplet to the riff, or they'll do guitar harmonies, or add harmonics.
Thank you. Yes.
Just to make it like a little different and keep it interesting, because they just play the riff until it's choked. Like
it's this track reminded me of like listening to Remission. A lot of like the tonal and like same producer, right? Same producer, Matt Bayless on Remission. So like a lot of the sounds and how organic and how like fuzzed out a lot of things are and how big it fucking sounds. It reminded me like Remission. Even like some of the bass tones on this record are very reminiscent of that. Very fuzzed out and just kind of warm in a weird way.
My favorite part of the song is the fucking drum break at the
151.
And then like the clean played, very, very deep guitar riff that comes after the drum break. And the drum break is also really weird because it's like you could hear the kick drum and the snare, but there's also another layer that sounds like the kick drum and the snare like distorted. Like they were peaking the microphone or something. Like it just sound like crackly.
There's so much of that.
It's off on the left-hand side. I think we've all realized too, with a lot of the records we've listened to, like, oh, these are headphone records. Like you got to listen to them so you can hear all the textural differences in it. Like if you were just listening to this album, like if you were working out or whatever, you're probably not going to notice those subtle things, right?
Right.
But hearing that and I go, okay, they've either recorded it or panned it or recorded it twice or something, so it does get that added effect, or could be with the keyboards adding some sort of effect there, some sort of soundscape. But yeah, 100%. I heard that distortion immediately.
I know there's like a lot of, the vocals, like I feel like, well, one thing about the vocals I'll say before I guess kind of jump off that is like you get that growl that we mentioned like for the first time.
Yeah.
A lot of Aaron's vocals like are, it's like an added element to the song.
Yep.
I don't really know what he's saying, but it like adds to just the overall experience of the song itself. And
very
like
tuneful.
Yeah, definitely. And then also they're just pushed so hard. Like it definitely sounds like they just fucking, it's in the red, like he's yelling and it's just like over saturated. It's very distorted. I fucking love that like kind of, I don't know, slower breakdown part for sure. It just, I love how this band its use of space. I love how
Right,
this
yep.
band uses the space around it. Like we kind of get that on the previous track as well, and some of the other songs where they have like those kind of jammy, more softer parts, softer but like also fucking horrific, kind of just gutting. Their use of just like the atmosphere and the space around them is seriously top notch. I fucking love it.
So there is what I know. I mentioned this about the two different kind of productions. You have Matt's original production, then you have the remaster. And the remaster, the bass is it's almost like it's there, but it's still under the mix a little bit. Whereas the original mix, it's more audible. And in this track, kind of in the more post style areas, you can hear a walking bass line taking place. It's very subtle, but it helps the track move forward. It adds more to the part. There's the bass playing in this band is more fundamental, more foundational with the type of band it is. It's helping move forward, but it's, as you said, being able to use that space. It's like, okay, I can kind of lock in a little differently here and add a little bit of character to it. And that's 100% what it does. But the back half of this track feels like a completely different song.
Yeah, they go right back into the shit. I mean, like it's like super heavy through like the remainder of the song, and it just kind of basically builds and builds until it just can't fucking do anymore.
This is the heaviest song on the album, like from front to back, probably. Like, I feel like a lot of the other songs have like the jammy part, and I feel like even the quiet, that like clean riff is still heavy in that it's just so deep. Sound like it's just the guitar by itself is so deep that it's still a fucking heavy riff. But this song doesn't really have like the jam part, so to speak, other than that.
It's very short too. Like in comparison to how the other tracks have that section is much shorter on this track in particular.
The next track is Swarm Rains.
Damn. In parentheses, damn.
My first note. My first note is the first riff of this song is 14 beats long.
Damn. That's my favorite song on the record, or one of them, I think.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites.
Mine comes a little later.
I love the opening riff. Again, vocals.
Crazy
it's a
drum
weird
fill.
weird fucking riff.
Definitely. Yep. I kind of mentioned this earlier. I mean, I just love where they kind of keep you guessing of like what they're going to do with it. Like, what's the new angle? Are they going to like change the rhythm? Are they going to add this? And so you kind of have that like shuffle kind of,
there's
strum that they got.
Yeah.
There's a triplet kind of bounce to it.
Yeah.
In certain aspects too.
Yeah. That's the triplet feel of the second riff I really liked a lot. And this song kind of only has 3 parts.
Yeah.
There's like the 2 loud parts, and then there's the quiet part, and then they go back to one of the 2 loud parts at the very end. There's 3 parts to this whole song.
Yeah, it's pretty linear. But yeah, the quiet part again, just like super cool. With their mixing of like electronics as well. I should mention with Cliff and stuff. I also want to note too, anytime there's like a quiet part, again with that space, it really does feel like you're in the room. Like it feels just, again, it put those headphones on, and I truly felt like I'm just like watching these fucking guys like just kind of jam it out. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
There's the bass is really fuzzed out and woolly in this song. You get this great kind of blending of sounds, which is, I think, a Matt Bayless kind of tool that he uses. He'll blend 2 bass tones. He'll get a clean signal and a distorted signal and blend them. An album that always makes me think of is Blood Mountain. Like if you solo out the bass track on there, it's fucking crazy sounding. But it does that on this album as well. I think the part at around 2:50, 3 minutes on here, sounds just like Through Silver and Blood era Neurosis. Like the guitars, the way they're hitting, there's this huge kind of like shrill noises and everything going on, and it's very jarring as well. Again, this track demolishes in those heavy parts. Like it really pushes the envelope a lot. You know, they're using that. I'm sure these guys played really fucking loud too. And with that amount of volume and how everything is kind of played and the amount of weight that they're using with the different tunings and everything, it's going to be pretty breathtaking at that point.
Aaron did say in a couple of different interviews a couple of things about being loud. Someone was like, yeah, when I saw y'all were so loud that people like wanted to leave the room because they couldn't stand to be in the room. And he was like, yeah, from the moment we started the band, we kind of thought it was important that people felt the loudness of this band in their body. Like, like when we play notes, we wanted people to feel it and not just hear it, because like that kind of like, we just like want to oppress people and our music to oppress people in that way. And he also, he was talking about like a noise project that I think he just released like a year or two ago, but he was like, one of the things about playing guitar is like, I always want to play guitar because it makes it loudly, because it makes it easier to like hear the intricacies of people playing guitar. Because if you play like super quiet, then there's all this little shit that you're doing that people aren't going to hear. And it's more important to him to play loud so that people can even hear the small stuff. So yeah,
like it.
They play loud as fuck.
This song kind of brings back the main riff, but just like maybe more intensely. Like it feels more intense, kind of like we mentioned with like the In Solitude thing, even to bring that like two very different records, but they're pretty, I don't want to say like straightforward. They like use a lot of the same themes, and but they might just add tweak a little something. So do we have anything more to add?
Yeah, this track just stops.
Yeah, I was gonna say it didn't hit me when that riff was going at the beginning of the song, but after they brought it back, I noted like maybe it was the way he was yelling. When it came back, it reminded me of Botch. I like specifically was like, right now this riff reminds me of Botch. I don't really know what like the way he was yelling, or maybe the rhythm of the lyrics, and also just the general dissonance of the riff all put together. I was like, this reminds me of We Are the Romans. But that the end of this song takes us into the second signal 02. It sounds a lot like Signal 1, but there's voices this time.
Yeah, there's like some television or radio, or at least that's how I interpret it. Yeah. I mean,
got no notes on this one.
Yeah, it's just it's a good breakup. It's fun. Like it just kind of moves you into different acts or parts of the record.
It also like it doesn't impose on the album. Like they're not long enough that you're like, can we get to the fucking kachunkas or whatever? Like,
yep.
Is that what you call those?
Get past this?
Kachunkas. One of my other favorite tracks on the record, Deconstructing Towers.
Great title.
Yeah, I like that this also, I don't know, like it has like a radio effect kind of thing on the guitar to bring us in from the signal or whatever, and then it's just right into the fucking wow.
That is the post-hardcore like Coalesce, Every Time I Die kind of skronky, hammer on pull off notes.
I actually, with that radio effect bringing the guitar in, I thought that was very fucking Mastodon. I thought it was so fucking Mastodon.
I could see that like Crusher Destroyer or something like that.
I like noted, I was like, this sounds like fucking Mastodon to me.
I could definitely see how this album probably helped impact the writing of what that band did, for sure. Like if you look at that band's early stuff versus where they went, 100%. There's no way.
Also, there's a guitar part on the song, the like chordy part, the like da 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 da. That reminds me of a song called Triad that's on Tool's Lateralis.
Mm.
Deep cut. Well, also
this band toured with Tool, right?
Sure did.
Yeah.
On the In Absence of Truth record, they sure did.
Damn, weird.
There are things in this track that I like a lot. When they, again, two guitars playing what sounds like completely different parts, but there's a tonal center, right? Like one guitar is just kind of hitting octaves and moving those back and forth, whereas another guitar is playing, a kind of a melody line or a lead line, but the tonal center is all the same thing. A lot of feedback play in this song. These great kind of chord stabs, chord stabs there. The motif keeps coming back in cycle with this song. This is just a really cool song. It's instrumental, but it feels like it could have had vocals on it.
I actually I didn't even fucking notice that there were no vocals on the song.
Yeah.
The first 4 listens, I didn't. I went, and then I sat down, I went, fuck, this is an instrumental track.
Yeah.
Like, how did I not know? Because the rest of the album, there's not a ton of vocals.
No, you kind of like the beginning of the record, the first song, it's like I feel like I zone out with the record enough where it's like, oh shit, oh hey, I forgot you were doing that on this record too. Welcome back, thank you, hi, how are you? All right, see you, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing we didn't really go through in just like the general notes of the band is Aaron Turner said that he was like never really comfortable with having to do vocals for this band, and when they first started, he actually like was trying actively to get someone else to do the fucking vocals, but they just couldn't like land on a person that they thought like fit the vibe of the band. So Aaron just eventually did them. But even in interviews like after ISIS was done, he was like, I literally past Wavering Radiant, I never felt fucking comfortable doing vocals for this band. Like never in the existence of the band.
Damn. And I do like Aaron's vocals and like, like Sumac, I think is rad. Like,
yeah.
That shit's great. It's so funny to me when you like, no, like you're doing great. And he's just like, I
don't like this.
I hate this. So
it's like me in this. It's like me in this show.
They didn't find their John Bush, man. They just couldn't find their John Bush. That's very like Hetfield-esque. It's like, I didn't want to fucking do this. I just did it.
Yeah, Dave Mustaine, like, shit, I got to do these.
The Mastodon guys, like we mentioned, they're like, we've got a tour we've booked. Fuck. All right, fuck it. We're doing it. We got to do vocals. This track, and it's on all the tracks, but I love the snare sound on this album. It's not crazy high. It's nice and tight, and it cuts without it being overbearing, right? Like anytime the snare hits, you fucking hear it. It's not overbearing, but it's just really good. The drums sound really good on this record. When the kicks come in too, they're felt more than they're heard, which adds a different element because of how the songs roll through. The kick isn't used a crazy amount in Secession. Like it's kind of just simple 4 on the floor stuff. But when he kind of ramps up on like, oh, I'm going to add a slight double kick pattern here or a different feel to it. It's like, oh, fuck, there's more weight to it.
One of my favorite parts of the song for sure was the like kind of halfway through, you get that like very punchy kind of, you just hit
slam
the
chords.
Hit of the chords.
Yep.
And it's like,
and it lasts until the rest of the fucking
oh
song.
my God.
Until
It's like
the song is over.
So much
There's
feedback and just
feedback
like,
hell.
It's like experimental, just a complete assault on the senses. And then I love when you get the acoustics that like fade in, and then the rest of it also fades back until you're just left with that acoustic guitar, which is also just kind of hitting like 1 or 2 chords. Yeah.
It transitions, like the part starts with just stab hits, like very staccato notes, and then it's like slows down a little bit and they're still playing the staccato notes, but then they start ringing out the chords, but it still just hits with chords ringing, and then it transitions to the fucking acoustic ringing chords with like no drum hits, but it's still just chords ringing. So this like part lasts for like 4 fucking minutes long, and it just literally started as like stabbing staccato hits over and over, and the riff doesn't even move. It's like
No,
it's the same
just
note
that.
over and fucking over again, and I fucking love that part.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part on the whole album.
That's so sick.
And it probably is like, I feel like every person that plays music at some point, like they do something just to piss people off. Like all musicians are dickheads, and they're just like, what can we do that like challenges the people that like this enough to make them angry? And that has to be what they were like, how long can we feasibly get away with just playing the same note over and over and over and over again? And it was like, let's do it for 5 minutes.
I like the angle of it. It's not like challenging in like we're sophisticated. It's like, I'm an asshole. Like,
Right.
like, I'm a literal dickhead. That's so funny.
But I don't even play music that much. We talked about like playing music together, and one of the first things I did was like, that riff's cool. We should repeat that over again and piss people off.
Right, yes.
Like, that was one of the first things I fucking did.
Fuck them. That's why. Signal 3, another one.
Okay, I got notes on this one this time.
Okay.
Sounds like a car.
That's on Signal 3. Not Signal 1 or 2.
Signal 3 is where it really catches its wit. It really comes into its own.
It's the third book in the series, so I really got to do it. It sounds like a car driving down the highway to me.
Okay. Yeah, it's like
it this is just from past traumas, but it sounds like casino games being played at the end of it too, and I'm like,
There is a new noise. They did add the like part
like,
to
goddamn.
yeah.
I just
Fucking
picture these old sexagenarians pulling the one-armed bandit.
cherries were like rolling in Dylan's eyes, like he was just heard the
a Looney Tune.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Mr. Papa Giorgio, we have your car ready for you.
That is why Dylan has notes on Signal 3, is because the trauma.
Only the trauma.
Right.
Hey, ain't that what this is about?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Collapse and crush.
And they crush immediately.
Big.
Yes.
Big.
Like world-ending big. Like it's so huge.
This is like Morbid Angel, like the big, like crazy Cannibal Corpse beatdown parts, huge. We talk about riffs. That's what our thing is, right? Most of the parts in this fucking song sound like, they don't necessarily even sound like riffs. They sound like movements almost.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah, it's technically a riff when isolated, but the way it moves, it's a movement. It takes up such a long period of time that it's not just like, oh, here's a riff we're going to return to. It's a movement. It's something that gets us from point A to point B. And this track is a great representation of that. Again, bass is really woolly and fuzzy here on this. And there's a part in the center of this, and in my notes, I made myself laugh. At around a minute and a half, those big chords come in, those lush sounding chords that make it sound very oceanic, like you're on the seas a little bit, very much like Hearts Alive. No, seriously, like has that Hearts Alive kind of vibe. And I wrote Oceanic before I even like put it together, like, fuck, that's the album. And it's just, this is a cool track. This is my favorite track on the record for sure.
Yeah, it's a good one. That first riff is big and nasty. Very dissonant.
Yes.
Very fucking dissonant.
Got some more of those like acoustic layerings a little bit.
Absolutely.
Just to have them in there. I like this kind of cleaner kind of breakdown part, or like the softer part, but it's like groovier. It's like I don't know, it's got a little bit more head nod to it, I guess, than some of the other ones do, where I feel like the other ones are kind of,
they stopped the song on a dime for that part.
They do.
The song is just like, and we're going soft.
Yeah.
Like,
it's such a jam.
At the beginning of that part, the bass is so fuzzed out, it almost sounds like synth fuzz. It sounds like a fuzzed out synth a little, but it's definitely bass on there.
So yes, I think there is a synth layer, but there also is really fucking fuzzy bass.
It's really fuzzy.
I think it's an accordion personally.
God damn it.
I knew I was right. Y'all lied to me. You lied to me.
God damn it.
How many months has it been?
Since that fucking these arms are snakes. It's been a while. I never got to fucking call y'all out on that.
Not on camera.
With Brian was like, no, that's an accordion. I'm like, yes.
Fucking idiot, moron.
Fucking God.
So
yeah, I still can't believe you slapped me when we saw each other in person over that.
Anyway, sorry, Dill.
The clean part in this sounds like, to me, probably something you guys aren't as familiar with, but sounds like an early Coheed and Cambria record. There's an album, their first record's called The Second Stage Turbine Blade, and the way it's very post-hardcore in that sense, and it's got these great clean passages and how they sound and how they move, and it's very much like, if you heard it, you would go, Utidi, 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 Utidi. It took everything in you not to make it. But on that first record, like, for sure, it's like, oh yeah, it's there. Like, it's more so a post-hardcore influence than anything. And these two records came out around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, keep going, because we're going to do one of those records this coming year. So get over it, bud.
Utidi. Ewok music.
Listen, Adam.
All right, and then the next track. We got C.F.T.
CMF.
New Circuit. What?
CMF. This is the Corey motherfucking Taylor's.
New Circuitry. New Circuitry and Continued Evolution.
Oh, man, I thought we were talking about CBT here.
I think that the quiet riff at the beginning of the song is like, this is the ISIS guitar riff.
That's the sound. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the sound.
Like, that is essential ISIS.
Yep. That slightly reverbed, hyper clean. Yep. That is it.
But then you get all that, like, it just, Matt's probably like fading it in ever so slowly with those drums and that, like, kind of, at first it's like a buzzsaw kind of lead sound.
Yeah. Agreed.
Later I'm gonna, with that psychedelic kind of, this is if ISIS made a blues jam, this is their blues jam. It was it's like a blues jam, and then there's like the kind of, when David Gilmour just goes off to the races with the guitar, just really bending the fuck out of those notes.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
There's the kind of fade in I want to bring. It kind of set, at first, when I first listened to this again, I thought it was the snares rattling. Like, because there's so much volume going on and it has that feel, but then it starts to fade in. You get the guitars, the drums, the bass all there, which is a really cool effect. This seems more like an instrumental track than Deconstructing Towers almost, because of how it's phased. This feels like a transition track of sorts. It's fun. It's great. It's a quicker track on the album. Matter of fact, it's the shortest track on the record. And it moves really quickly. There's some groove in it. There's these keyboard swells that happen in the backgrounds at certain points. This is like the trippiest track on the record. Like, this is like the moodiest and trippiest track on the record. It's kind of a breakup of these two fucking heavy things.
I noted in the first of all, I took my notes from the remaster, and you mentioned that the bass isn't as loud on the remaster, so maybe it's why. But I noted that in the like second half of the song, once they like get past the jam and the like fading up and all that I couldn't hear bass at all.
Yeah.
But I could distinctly hear 3 guitar tracks. So I was wondering if they just had the bassist play guitar for the recording of this song.
Cliff, when they play live throughout the years, has also picked up a guitar as well. So, like, there's footage of all 3 of the guys, because it's like, usually Aaron's got some sort of Telecaster during this era or a Les Paul during this era, and the other 2 guys will have one as well, like in certain aspects of the band. So that's very likely that you heard those 3 guitar tracks, but you're right. I've listened to both mixes at different points, and the original mix, the bass is much more up front. Whereas in that remaster, when did that remaster come out? Was it 2013?
2013, yeah.
It's wild too, because it's wild to think that maybe it was buried in a mix. Maybe somebody was mad. Maybe it was the instrument it happens. I mean, look at Injustice for All. You know,
I am gonna go out on a limb and say the people in ISIS and the people in Metallica are very different people.
that is
And
probably
also,
a true fact.
The people in ISIS and the people in Megadeth are very different people.
No, not Sweet Dave. No.
They call him
and
famously Sweet Dave.
Reading interviews with Aaron, he said that like they might not be on the best of terms, but they don't have like ill feelings towards each other. So I don't think that
I'm making light. But I don't know why the 2013 mix is not as stellar. But it is missing some of the low end this band is known for. Like the Matt Bayless mix, when I listened to it the first time, I went, oh my God. Like it felt like my fucking headphones were blowing up. It's like, Jesus Christ, there's so much low end, and that's just a trait of his production. But you're right. You can't really hear the bass much in the back half of that song.
Then we get to kind of the last song on the album, Gentle Time, which is a very misleading name. It's not a gentle time.
No. Big sustaining riffs again, man.
Yeah.
Opening makes me think of Nirvana.
Oh, interesting.
That's weird.
That kind of clean, very hyper clean into just like fuzzed out shit.
Sure.
Like very, is it Francis Farmer?
Yeah.
Yep. Very much that.
That first riff is like in 12, I think. So it's a very normal time signature, but the chord changes are just so fucking like weirdly timed that the riff sounds so strange. It just sounds like we're like playing in 13 different time signatures right now, but it's just a normal time signature.
They're doing the Meshuggah thing where it's hitting at the different points of the track.
I love all the experimentation too, like not only in just, they're playing, but like some of the effects and stuff that's going on. I mean, there's like that phaser that's kind of like cutting through. But also with the playing, I will say there's like the chugs and then also like a very dissonant kind of accent that's being played on the guitar.
Yes, it is.
Radio vocals, that's being played.
So vocals on this track made me think of like Electric Wizard's Dope Throne.
Oh
like
yeah,
how
there's
like,
definitely some of that on there.
Straight up that. Like I heard that was like, fuck, that's Joe.
That cleaner yell, I think definitely gives me that. I would go as far as to say that there's like some kind of Matt Pikey sounding gruffs on here, especially maybe even if you listen to the EP that kind of followed this. There's some of that. I don't know. But the Electric Wizard, I thought that as well. Yes.
Yeah. Like I heard that and I was like, fuck, that sounds like Dope Throne. Like immediately.
Well, might be talking about that next year too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Swindle, I don't know if you heard it as well because you listened to the remaster. But I know the bass is gross sounding in the first portion of this song. And right as the dissonance kicked in, the phaser, as Austin mentioned, on the drums and the vocals, like the drums got phaser on, like fuck it, put phaser on everything. Why the fuck not? Eddie Van Halen did it, put it on everything. The guitar interplay in this track is awesome, like the back and forth between the guitars. Again, just a great stellar track. A lot of octave play on this thing, like just fucking cool track.
That octave riff at the end of the song, that's a big riff. But the like chuggy panic chord riff, I wrote that is like that riff by itself standing alone is like a combination of Black Sabbath and Converge because it has a panic chord and a big bend in it in the same riff.
Boom. I can see that for sure. 100%. That's what a weird fucking band. Especially on this record. Like, what a weird band. What a fun, weird band.
And also, just to note again, I mean, Aaron Harris is playing on drums is like holding the foundation, but like there are so many, I mean, not just this song, but I mean, he goes like ape shit on this fucking track, like kind of like 3/4 of the way through, I'd say. And there's like so many moments where, all right, you're holding the foundation down, but then you're like, here's a crazy fill. Here's a little thing that I'm doing here. Like we've kind of noted in certain parts, but like, man, I just need to reiterate that. That's such a fun, as a guitar and drum band, I think. Like the guitar, the riffs and like all the experimentation with that and the fucking drums are so much fun to kind of listen in on.
And it's so wild too, because I think in the later career of this band, you lose some of that because the songs get much more kind of focused on this soundscapey thing that they do, and they do it very good. Like it's hard to compete with this band. This band sounds like ISIS. They don't sound like any of their influences, but this is a very raw version of that sound for sure. This is as close to like them being like a standard dyed in the wool, like doom or sludge band of that scent. Because once the following record hits Oceanic, it's completely different. Like there's elements of that for sure, but it is completely different sounding.
And then we close out the album with Signal 4, which is more bleeps, more typing, more kind of staticky, and more talking, more mumbled talking.
Ends where it begins.
So although this band wrote a lot of material, it seemed as though they wanted this to be like a double album. It was like they were just packed with, songs and just more tracks, maybe like
overflowing
5
even.
To be exact. I'm so happy to say that they had the wherewithal to be like, maybe a double album is not the way to go for your debut record. That might.
I'm sure if this were a double album, we would not be talking about this album.
Definitely. Nah. So, and I feel like they've done this a little bit throughout the years too, where they'll put out a record and then they might do a little bit of something afterwards or whatever. They did it, I believe, on Oceanic as well, maybe like an EP that followed it. So with this, they did release a kind of companion EP, like an expansion of this. These are all songs that were like conceived during this process and all these sessions, but it's called Signal 5. It was released in 2001 on Neurot Records, which of course, as Dylan mentioned before, is a label founded by members of Neurosis. The EP itself was released on March 6th of 2001. I think this was like only like the 12th release for Neurot Records, so kind of early on into that. But yeah, all parts of the same whole, as Aaron mentioned. I think even with that in mind, all of these songs on the EP are labeled as 12 through 16. Like that's how they considered it. And the liner notes on the back tray, I found this very funny. It read, instructions: play loud, smoke weed, don't sell this on eBay, don't copy this for your friends, and listen to this goddamn thing the whole way through for the best results. So I do love it. You also get some kind of guest appearances on this as well, mainly with Justin K. Broderick, of course, from Godflesh, Yazoo. Really
Napalm
cool.
Death.
Napalm Death as well. So he basically reinterpreted the title track Celestial and kind of does some shit there. I listened to this. I think it's great that it exists. I definitely am glad that they did not include this on here. It just would have, it's just, man, it's so long. It would have been, albums don't really need to be any longer than an hour, in my opinion.
Right. As I've mentioned multiple times, long albums make me grumpy. So if this album had been like, I don't know, 75 minutes, I probably wouldn't have. I would have stopped listening to ISIS.
The fucking 5 tracks that are on here alone, 35 minutes.
So it would have been 85 minutes.
Yeah.
The double album would have been 85 minutes.
So, and they
no fucking way.
They have released deluxe versions of this as like one, piece together. But yeah, sorry.
Not for me.
I just can't.
Not for me,
dog.
Coach.
Bands, of the bands that we love you. We really do. If you think about doing a double album, go back, take a look at your songs, think about it for a minute. Think about, it's not SoundScan area anymore. You're not trying to rack up units like you used to. If you want to put out a double record, great, your call. But just remember, someone's probably not going to listen to all of it. Please keep your albums within around that 45-minute to about hour range on the high side, 30 to 35 on the lowest. And if you're like Swindle, keep them 6 minutes in length.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to hear your 30-minute record. So after after they release this album, they get to go on tour with Dillinger Escape Plan,
Fuck.
Candiria, and Burn It Down. One of those stops is the 2000 Hellfest, but not the one that's happening today.
Yep.
The
real
one that
Hellfest.
used-
In France, the one in New Jersey. Or no,
Right,
Syracuse. Sorry, Syracuse.
Close.
New York.
Close
fuck it,
enough.
It's all up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck Rochester. What? Fuck
Binghamton?
What was yeah, fuck
Binghamton?
Binghamton, New York. But also around this time, a show that one of the members of ISIS holds near and dear to his heart was opening for Cradle of Filth for one single show.
On the Midian
On
era.
the Midian cycle.
Go back and listen to our thoughts about Midian. All of us review it so glowingly.
Thanks,
but-
David.
But yeah, I guess this show really made an impact when everyone in the front row turned their back to ISIS and did not watch them play. And out of the 1,500 or so people that were at this show, one person bought a shirt and one person bought a CD.
I love the statement of they turned their backs on us, so we just played harder. I like that. I also can picture all of these kids looking like panda bears and raccoons in their paint, like turning their backs on ISIS because it's like, and ISIS alone is going like, what did we sign up for? What did we volunteer to play? All right, we're doing this because this is on a bill with like, looks like Rotting Christ and Usurper. And apparently at some point during the show or set up for it, like one band just wanted to play later. So they're like, yeah, ISIS took our keyboard. ISIS, and they hit it.
The band,
God
the
damn.
other band, yeah.
The other band hid their
The
own
band
They hit
keyboard
their
so they could
own
play later.
keyboard.
Like, I mean, if your keyboard player's that bad, just call it a night. Tell them to go have a drink at the bar. Like, it's just that simple. Like, Jesus, what? I have seen bands play weird bills. I have seen bands get on weird tours. That might be one of the weirdest because it's like, you know, orchestrated, like blackened, whatever, right? ISIS is borderline a drone band, especially during this era. Just like, all right, we're playing 2 songs. We got 35 minutes with you guys. All right, tighten up your belts, assholes. We know you got those studded belts on.
So I know we're not going to get into too much because, you know, with the aftermath of like this record, just because I know we're likely going to talk about it more. But after the release of this record, they would ultimately sign to Ipecac Records for their sophomore record, Oceanic. Essentially a label founded by Greg Workman, who was a former label manager for Alternative Tentacles. And then, of course, Mike Patton, Faith No More, Mr. Bungle. And so I guess really, I guess they just kind of wanted to up their game. They wanted to try something else, maybe have a label with a little bit of a broader reach. And so I think where the connection comes in is actually James Plotkin.
Who?
Yeah, they like collaborated. He's in Canadian.
Plotkin was also the person that did the remaster, right?
Oh, really? There you go.
I believe so.
So I think they had already like collaborated with each other at this point, him and Aaron. And so James was on Ipecac. I don't know what project for, but he was already had ties to that label.
His name has came up in the past. We've discussed his name in the past.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thou.
Oh yeah, he's
Okay.
like mastered all the thou shit for sure.
That's what it is.
But he's, for whatever reason, I don't know what, comment, yell at me, yell at your screen. Someone's yelling at their screen right now. He has ties
Bravo.
to Ipecac. Aaron passes along some of the ISIS stuff to James in hopes of it reaching Mike. Turns out Mike's already, I believe, already a fan of the group.
Come on.
So it just made sense. And so thus you have that.
Entrusting your releases to a label that is very prone to release weird shit is so good. I mean, you look at Ipecac's label lineup, even to this day, and just some of their past releases. Like, Mike is king of writing weird shit. Anything from as crazy as Mr. Bungle to Mondo Kane which is like an Italian saying, classical songs, right? The guy's going to do anything. And to know he's a fan of this style of music because he did the EP with the Dillinger Escape Plan as well, which had a great, there's some cover on there that was really fun, but he's a fan of this style of music. And to see him just go like, oh yeah, we're signing you. I'm already a fan of your band. Like, fucking get out of here.
But yeah, everything comes back full circle with Plotkin because they re-released this album with the remaster, and James Plotkin was the person that mastered the remaster. That Dylan hates. Dylan hated it.
I do not hate it. I do not hate
James, sorry. Sure you're listening to this?
I do not hate it. I am just more partial to the original
I was
mix.
in Arkansas.
Note
July,
the time.
in the month of July in 2024, I was in Arkansas with no cell reception, no computer access. I was just throwing rocks into a river.
Any final thoughts on Celestial?
I love this record. I think, as you said, we'll go back and, at some point we'll do an Oceanic episode. We may try to get Chained or someone else to join us again to do that because they've mentioned interest in that. But I think this is my favorite ISIS record. Like I noted at the beginning, like this is their heaviest full length. A lot of their like records after this are a lot more mellow, and they lean a lot more into the post metal kind of side of songwriting. And I really love the heavy parts of this album. So if you're into the heavier parts of ISIS, don't forget to come back and revisit this album because it's so fucking good.
It's a fun record. I do want to mention one thing, is that obviously the band breaks up in 2010. They reform for one night only for a Caleb Schofield tribute show, and they played as Celestials.
Yep.
They played as Celestial. Yep.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that as like just kind of
the importance
full circle. Yeah,
probably this record or that time rather. I mean, touring together and being in
Caleb
band
was in Old Man Gloom, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
right.
Yeah, definitely a cool thing, and to pay tribute to an old friend and collaborator for sure. So great record. As someone who like only really knew about this band through just reading and some of the other projects I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit. I fucking loved it. I can't wait to learn more. Tell us what your favorite record is. I'm sure we'll get to it, but fuck yeah, ISIS, Celestial.
Now we've reached that part of the episode where we like to give out our recommendations. I am gonna take a trip back a week and recommend that everyone check out and buy the Sunrot and Body Void split that came out on the Trans Day of Remembrance on November 20th. Came out through Riff Merchant Records, and all the proceeds go to Black Trans Liberation, an organization. So buy that, you'll get a record, you'll get a nice art zine, and you'll give money to people who need it.
Great piece. I love all of the shit on it. Fun chat with them as well. Like seriously, like it was great getting to know them and talk about fucking just an arsenal or wall of sound with some of the fucking noise on that shit.
Right, yeah.
We're talking about fucking ISIS, so I'm going to talk about Sumac for a second. The new record, The Healer, that came out this year through Thrill Jockey Records, a great Chicago label. It came out in June 21st of this year. 4 songs, 1 hour and 16 minutes. Talk about the use of space and also being stupid heavy. And I love the vocals on this record. Fun release. I think this is also equally like, I listened to Celestial and then I listened to this record, and yeah, it was a
3
trip.
hours of fucking music.
Yeah, it was
Have you
wild.
listened to the first Sumac joint?
I can't say that I have.
It's really heavy.
Yeah,
so there
it's
you go.
really fucking gnarly.
Yeah.
Listen to both of those, then listen to fucking The Healer and The Deal. Also, I guess from 2015.
Dylan and I are gonna see him next month.
We are.
Oh yeah.
Sure are.
They're
Yep.
on December 7th. They're playing with Kowloon Walled City at Dark Matter in Nashville.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy
shit.
One of my favorite venues.
Yeah.
Oh,
Truly.
that's a rad venue.
It's gonna be fucking loud.
Bring your fucking earplugs, kids. Take a lesson from old Dill. I saw Primitive Man there. No earplugs. Great decision.
I finally every time I've seen Primitive Man, I've always forgotten until I saw them recently with Amon Ra, which again, amazing experience. But yeah, bring your earplugs for that. But Sumac the Healer out now. Check it out. Shit rips.
I guess it's me. I've got one thing. This is the newest release or the newest single from Killswitch Engage on their forthcoming album, The Consequence. It'll be released through Metal Blade Records on February 21st, 2025. It's the first release in, a handful of years for the band, prior to the pandemic, actually. So the track is Forever Aligned. If you're a fan of this band, this isn't going to shock you or surprise you. It's just really locked in, well done, kind of Boston metalcore. Just fun shit, catchy riffs, great production from Adam D as well, but just really good track.
Check it out. That's what we've been listening to. You can find links to those releases or singles below. If you're looking for new music, you can always find it on Hits from the Crypt, on Apple Music, Riffs on Repeat, on Spotify. Those are updated pretty regularly, so there's always something new you can find there. Dylan also does reviews from the Dillbozer's Den on YouTube, reviewing some newer records, things we think you should be checking out as well. You can follow us for any updates on this show at Riff Worship Pod, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also email us at riffworshippod@gmail.com if you ever want to share something, reach out to us, say hey, whatever. Stuff. This has been a show. Thanks again for joining us this week. Anything else? Do I miss anything? I don't care. Anyway, for myself, for Swindle, for Dylan, we'll be back next week with something else. See ya.